So welcome everybody, excited for today's call. We've got an amazing speaker today, Sanja Todorovic. Kind of funny stories. Her and I were connecting the other day, and we both realized we knew each other. We couldn't put like two and two together and realized we were in a industry roundtable back in 2018 up in Toronto. And so it was great to reconnect with her. I'm going to kick it over to Sanja, but I do want to cover a little bit about her background. She's got an amazing background. So, hear me out here. So 20 years of experience in large global organizations, main focus areas, to name a few, customer experience, strategy and transformation, driving technological innovation, agile digital transformation, corporate culture, experience with offshore, nearshore models, global procurement, third-party risk management, and many more. Sanja's career began in telecom. She was working for TELUS. That's actually when we met up in the roundtable. She was working for TELUS and then was focusing in on strategic partnerships and site strategy. She spent time at Manulife before moving to her current employer, Home Capital Group, where she's head of enterprise procurement. More importantly, she's a vocal advocate for DE&I in business. She spent a number of years volunteering as a corporate mentor to women in minority-owned businesses, and can often be found at different events advocating for corporate supplier diversity programs. She's an active advisory board member for Women in Tech Canada with a mission to increase female representation in STEM. She's part of Supply Chain Canada as well. She's also an international speaker and writer, published in numerous international media outlets. To name a few, because there's so many. She's been featured on covers of Sustainability Magazine, FinTech Magazine, WBE Canada Magazine. I mean, the list goes on. She holds an Executive Master of Business Administration degree, Master of Management degree, double major in law and political science. And in her free time, when she does have free time, Sanja enjoys spending time at her cottage with her husband and two sons, enjoying water sports at the lake in the summertime, and then hitting the slopes in the wintertime up in Canada. So welcome, Sanja. Really appreciate your time. Looking forward to today's call. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. Thanks so much, George. And thank you for that great introduction. Let me just share my screen here. The problem is once I share the screen, I can't see any one of you. So I do apologize if there's any hands that go up. Missy and George, I hope that you guys can tell me about it. But here we are. I'm going to kick it off. And I'm going to start off by saying thank you to the Select Group for organizing this amazing event. I seriously feel honored and privileged to be part of it. And I hope that the next hour or so is a lot of fun and it provides you with a lot of value. So if there's any questions that do come up, please do not feel shy to raise them. We will have a Q&A period at the end of the session. And I know there's some questions that came through during the registration, so we'll cover those as well. But if we don't get through all of them, no big deal. I'm more than happy to take the conversation offline, and I will share my contact info towards the end. So I know that George gave a little bit of a background story on me, but and maybe you had a chance to look me up as well on LinkedIn. But I'm going to give you a little bit more of non-public available information. So it's exclusive info here. And I thought that the hashtag of This Little Girl Is Me is quite fitting here. So before I start, for all of the youngsters on the call, do not hate, appreciate the 1980s fashion that's clearly depicted on the top left-hand picture there. The dress that I'm wearing, that haircut, and even the decor of the couch that I'm sitting on was quite fashionable back in the day. I'm told that I was a pretty cool toddler, so I choose to believe that. So that makes me an elder millennial, or is a zennial. I'm not really quite sure what the right terminology is, but what I do know is that I'm part of that sub-generations right between Gen X's and millennials, where we're not quite as spicy as Gen Xers but definitely not as hipster as millennials. So I think we were lucky enough to be part of the group that gets the best of both worlds. I am the queen of transformation. Now, what gives me authority to claim this title is my past. In case you were wondering why my first name is spelled the way it is, but it's pronounced as Sanja, it's because I was born in Eastern Europe in a country that no longer exists today. That country is called Yugoslavia. And simply, our alphabet does not contain a letter Y. Our J's are pronounced as Y's. Now, I left Yugoslavia in the mid-1990s, and by the end of that decade, I was fortunate enough to call Canada my home. And the reason why I even bring this up here is because I want to drive the point across. And that point is that your past does not define you. Your past will only victimize you if you allow it to. I often hear people talk about the fact that they had dysfunctional or poor upbringing and maybe not enough resources that allowed them to do better in life. And I often think about that and think that it's really used as a crutch. Heck, like I didn't have a childhood. I never finished elementary education properly, never finished grade 4, never went to grade 5 or 6, and only did few months of grade 7 here in Canada while trying to learn a whole new language. So I might not know my ABCs, but I can certainly put a strategy for global business expansion for you. So while everything, like the main point here is your past does not define who you are. Only you can do that. Now, I was born to inspire, lead, and advocate for women. And when I say that, I truly mean it. I was born into this role because I'm the oldest out of 3 sisters. And as any firstborn will tell you, our sole mission and purpose in life is to break in our parents and pave the way for an easier life for our siblings. And I think I did a pretty good job at that, especially during my rebellious teenage years. Speaking of which, I was raised on Salt and Pepper, Tupac, Biggie, Dr. Dre, and later on Eminem. And I kid you not, I can recite any 90s rap lyric for you. But if you ask me what I had for lunch yesterday, I probably wouldn't be able to tell you. Now, I also want to give a shout out to the amazing halftime show that we had for Super Bowl this year. It was such a treat for me. It was a walk down the memory lane. However, what I did not appreciate about it is my kids giving me the eye roll, the same eye roll I used to give to my parents back when they would play anything from the 70s. Now, I do have a BFF wish list. And on that list, I have Oprah and Judge Judy. Now, don't judge me for it. Let me explain. Oprah, I love her for being a self-made household name. And because it's Oprah, I mean, who doesn't love Oprah? I actually had a chance to see her here in Toronto about 10 years ago. And I had this whole thing played up in my mind of how that interaction was going to go. I envisioned that our eyes were going to lock, our hands were going to touch, there will be sparks, and I will replace Gail very fast. Now, that bubble obviously was bursted pretty fast because once I got to the venue where Oprah was, I realized how many more Oprah lovers there were, and the chances of me actually meeting her face to face were slim to none. So I had to settle for tiny little Oprah that I was able to see from all the way at the back of the venue where I was sitting. But knowing that I was at the same venue, under the same roof, breathing the same air as Oprah, gave me a comfort level that we had that connection, even though Oprah probably never really knew that. Now, Judge Judy, highly controversial person here, but she is a 4 feet of dynamite that I absolutely admire for her shameless ability to speak her mind. And I'm pretty sure that if we were ever to meet, we would connect and become BFFs right away. Now, I am married to my high school sweetheart. We have been together for a lot longer than I care to admit here. And together we have 2 boys, a 12-year-old and a 10-year-old. And those 2 keep all 3 of them keep my negotiation skills pretty sharp. We also do have 1 COVID puppy. And let me clarify, the puppy does not have COVID. We got him during the first lockdown back in 2020. And he is a much loved and needed addition to our family. I am determined to leave this world in a better shape than when I found it. And I know it sounds like such a bold statement. It's my BHAG, big, hairy, audacious goal. And the way I'm going to achieve that is by continuing to be highly caffeinated and wildly ambitious. So help me God. So on that note, I'm going to take us to this very famous quote by Bob Marley. You never know how strong you are until being strong is your only choice. Now, this quote really resonated with me, and I'm pretty sure that if you have heard it before, there's a lot of truth to it. But the reason why I want to start off with that is because I want to talk about this notion of grit versus grind. Because I think if you truly understand what it means, it allows you to identify when you find yourself in that state, and it allows you to use it as a stepping stone to get out of it. So grind is basically being on autopilot, doing the repetitive work for the sake of doing it. Just going through the motions, getting things done because someone's got to do it. And you have absolutely no personal development or pleasure or pride in what you're doing. Grit, on the other hand, is not opposite of fragile. Grit is the strength, passion you get from within that you gain from challenge, such as grind. And while you can't control your surroundings, you can control how you react to things. And knowing how to identify properly when you are in grind allows you to do something about it and get out of that state. Now, while you're doing that, do not get into a trap of comparing yourselves to others. Now, I started this conversation by giving you a bit of non-publicly available information about myself, and I did that on purpose. And the reason for that is because I'm going to come out and say that I'm willing to bet that absolutely nobody else on here has exactly the same life as me. Now, I'm going to go one step further and say that none of us on this call have exactly the same life as any one of us on this call. It is for that reason that it's absolutely ludicrous to compare your life to anybody else. Simply assuming that someone else is just like you, but somehow has this better life than you and that you want, it does absolutely nothing for you except to lower your own vibration and pull you into the grind mode. Now, that's not to say that you shouldn't have role models and people that you aspire to be like. You absolutely should. But those people should not be your measuring stick that you use to beat yourself up with. Because every minute you spend wishing you had someone else's life is a minute you spend wasting yours. Now, I'm a strong believer that healthy competition is good for you. And if you are, just like me, competitive and you need that drive, go for it. But the only competition you should ever be in is the one with yourself. As the saying goes, you do you. Strive for personal best every day and always aim to be a little bit better than you were the day before. Remain open to new ideas, constructive criticism, growth, and continuous learning. The most successful people are lifelong students, and being honest with yourself that you don't know what you don't know allows you to constantly learn and grow and develop. So if you need someone to give you a little bit of a kick in the butt and you need to compete with, look in the mirror, because that should be your only competition. Now, this is my favorite slide. Own your truth and never dim your light just to make others feel comfortable. Do not change who you are in order to assimilate into your surroundings. Now, I must admit, I was guilty of doing this at the early stages of my career. I truly believed that if I looked like everybody else, talked like everybody else, dressed like everybody else, and behaved the same way as everyone else, I will blend in and I will assimilate. I will be part of the team. And you know what I did? I blended into the mediocrity that was around me. There is truly something magical about being a unique unicorn. It allows you to be happier you. It allows you to bring your whole self forward. It allows you to use your entire mental capacity to learn, grow, expand, perform, as opposed to using a portion of that for this role-playing thing that you might have going on the side. And it's just so exhausting. Can you imagine being a completely different person when you are at work versus when you are out with your friends versus when you're in your family? Life is just too short to waste it trying to fit in and losing yourself in the process. Now, for those of you that know me, you heard me talk about this so many times. It is my absolutely favorite topic to talk about. Never underestimate the power of your network. I mean, George brought it up at the introduction stage of this call, but truly it is unbelievable. And let me give you a quick story. This happened about 4 years ago. I was in a company of 5 university students that actually were doing their 3-month co-op term in the organization where I was working. So at the end of their first day, I thought I'd check in with them, see how everything is going, and make sure we didn't scare them off. They were actually going to come back the next day. And during that conversation, I really wanted to know what is it that they're going to do to ensure that the connections that they're making here and for the next 3 months are the meaningful ones that they can potentially call upon once they graduate. Because I think we can all agree that long gone are the days of business cards, and I don't think they're making a comeback. So my question really was, guys, do you have a LinkedIn profile? And are you using it to ensure that people you're meeting here today and for the next 3 months are on there? And when I asked the question, the response was puzzling. It was there was a lot of blank stares until one of them stood up and said, and I quote, "LinkedIn, isn't that for old people?" Now, I'm not going to lie, I was hurt. I was hurt by the implication that I am the old person. But at the same time, I felt sorry for these poor lost souls that grew up in the era of digital social media that made them absolutely antisocial in real life. So much so that they couldn't even recognize that old people are the ones they're going to seek an employment from. So I needed to save them from themselves, and I gave them homework that night. And the homework was that they had to create a LinkedIn profile. And they had to include me as their first and only connection for the purpose of me ensuring that their LinkedIn looks nothing like their Instagram account. Now, as I said, that was 4 years ago. I still have all 5 of them on my LinkedIn network, and I'm happy to say that they took my advice and they ran with it. They all have graduated since, and they are gainfully employed, contributing part of the society. And I see that their network has grown a lot since then. So that makes me really happy. So for everyone on this call here, if you have a LinkedIn profile, if you don't have one, that's your number 1 step, create it. If you have one, but it's sitting dormant and you're not really doing anything with it, you're also not doing yourself any favor. Having a LinkedIn presence alone is not enough. You need to put work into it. You need to work on establishing, creating, maintaining meaningful business connections. And you do this by continuously providing value to your network. Now, whether it's sharing insightful information, whether it's commenting on their information, whether it's getting involved in different groups or spearheading different initiatives, whatever the case might be, if you constantly look for the ways to provide value, your network will reciprocate. Now, this is another quote that originally started with "fake it till you make it," until Amy Cuddy changed it to "fake it till you become it." And I actually like it a lot more. Have a goal, believe that you can achieve that goal, and then live your life every day knowing that you're on your way to achieving that goal. Have an action plan and hold yourself accountable to that action. And you know what? If the plan doesn't work, big deal, change the plan, but never ever change the goal. Confidence, belief, determination are all crucial part of this process. And if you need help with any one of those, simply start by doing some research around the power of body language, the power of positive thinking, the power of power posing. And I'll tell you, exposing yourself to public speaking is probably one of the easiest things that will cover it all. And I know it's a number 1 fear for adults. But trust me when I say it is like a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it gets until it eventually becomes part of your DNA. And as the famous Henry Ford quote goes, whether you think you can or you can't, you are right. So whatever you're doing today and going forward, do it with the confidence of a 4-year-old in a Batman t-shirt. Now, this next topic is not as sexy as all of the other ones we covered so far, but I think it's very important that we need to talk about it. Because if you haven't experienced the imposter syndrome, chances are you will. It doesn't discriminate. Everyone is prone to it. I think women probably a little bit more than men, but nevertheless, we are all victim to it at some point in our life. So let me tell you when it first happened to me. This was years ago now. There was this role that I really, really wanted. And I knew that if I had an opportunity and if I got it, I would kick butt and take names. So I applied. I applied for it. I interviewed for it. I even presented to the hiring committee. And sure enough, I received an offer. And I was ecstatic, over the moon. It was my dream job after all. And instead of kicking butt and taking names, like I said I would, I spent the next 3 months feeling that at any given time, someone was going to call me up or walk into my office and say, hey, Sanja, sorry, we made a mistake. We thought that you were better than you actually are. Or, hey, Sanja, sorry, this role was supposed to go to somebody else that is more qualified than you, but by accident, we gave it to you. And it's probably the worst feeling that you can have, because here you are trying to focus to be your best, to prove yourself in this new role, while at the same time feeling like an imposter. So it took me 3 months of this agony before I decided to do something about it. So I reached out to my network and I spoke to one of my mentors. And I called her up and I said, I remember the conversation too. I said, hey, I think I'm losing it, like losing both my mind and about to lose this job because I'm not as good as they thought I was. And her reaction was hilarious. Like she literally bursted out laughing. And then she said, quote unquote, what you are experiencing, it's called an imposter syndrome. Chill out. It's a real feeling, but a fake reality. So you need to snap out of it now. So think about it. It's a real feeling, but a fake reality. So it's something that you create in your head. It's not real. So what to do when you feel like an imposter? Because I'm sure if you haven't felt it already, you will. Number one thing, acknowledge it. Acknowledge it for what it is. It's a real feeling, but a fake reality. And you have to acknowledge it. Otherwise, you're going to drive yourself crazy thinking there's something wrong with you. Think about it for 30 seconds. Not 3 months like I did, 30 seconds. Give yourself permission to dwell on it, but no longer than 30 seconds. And then ditch it. After all, you do have better things to worry about than this fake real thing that's occupying space in your mind, rent-free. And then continue kicking butt and taking names like you know that you're capable of. Now, this next topic I completely stole from Sheryl Sandberg, and I did that because I wanted to amplify the message. Take up space. You deserve a seat at a table. Just take up space in every sense of the word. The way you walk, the way you talk, the way you present yourself, the way you sit, the way you stand, the way you get involved in different webinars, different seminars, different conferences, whether it's writing for magazines, whether it's writing a blog, whether it's recording a podcast, whatever it might be, just continue taking up space. And if you're wondering what's the first step, like how do you get to a point where you actually have an opportunity to take up space? I take you back to the point that I made earlier. Never underestimate the power of your network. If you provide value to your network will reciprocate. So keep being assertive, keep on leading, keep telling the truth, keep taking up space, and never ever apologize for the space that you take up. Now, a lot of these things they sound a lot easier said and done. And you're right, it is. But it really all starts with you. It starts with you getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. Now, comfort zone is a beautiful place, but nothing grows there. And some people are fine with that. Some people are fine being on autopilot and cruise control. And if that's you, great, all power to you. But if that's not your cup of tea, you really need to take the initiative to get yourself out of that zone. Because if you don't, you will be pulled into the grind. So take the initiative. That first step is the hardest, but it's the most rewarding. Now, the reason why it's the hardest is because you have this fear of unknown, because you have never done it before, so you don't know what to expect. Well, once you do it once, you kind of see what it's all about, that it's no big deal. You can do it all over again. It gives you that, it liberates you from that fear. And who knows, you might be really surprised with the outcome that you get from taking that first initiative. If you don't ask, the answer will always be no. Please do not assume that people around you can read your mind. Although we would sometimes want our spouse, our boss, our children, our parents, whoever, to be able to read our mind, but they simply can't do that. So unless you explicitly declare and ask for what you want, the answer will always be no. And it's okay not to succeed the first time, because you can't win every battle. As long as you don't give up, not succeeding the first time actually gives you advantage, because the next time that you try, you're not starting from ground zero. You're actually starting from the gained experience that you wouldn't otherwise have. And it doesn't matter, even if you get 100 no's, who cares? Because it really only takes one yes to change your life. And you owe it to yourself to do something that you have never done in order to accomplish what you want and never had. Now, the last point here is the hardest one. Ask for help. Asking for help is not a sign of weakness. In fact, it is a sign of wisdom in knowing that you can go a lot further if you have a team supporting you. So whether it's something on a personal level or if it's a professional, it doesn't matter. Lean into your network, lean into your support, ask for help. And I guarantee you there will be people who will be more than happy to be the wind underneath your wings. And you will be surprised how far you can get when you have an entire village behind you. Now, I know that we've seen this depiction of the success as an iceberg way too many times, and I'm not here to beat the dead horse. I actually wanted to use it here as a way to do a self-reflection here. And what I mean by that is that even ourselves, so never mind what people see versus what they don't see, but even ourselves, when we look at ourselves, we tend to forget the whole bottom portion of the iceberg. We ourselves focus on what other people see, and it will be either happy or not happy about it. And I want to take a moment for self-reflection to truly go through all of the hurdles, all of the challenges, all the obstacles that you have overcome that got you to the place where you are at right now. Because when you have this when you feel that sense of gratitude, you're able to calculate and understand your own worth. And if you don't know what your value is, somebody else will calculate it for you. And I guarantee you, it will never be anything close to what it truly is. Know your worth, demand it, and don't settle for anything less than what you deserve. When you know and value your own worth, you will stop giving people discounts. Now, I really want you to read these 3 points in the context of not just your professional life, but your personal life as well. If you don't know your own value, you cannot fight for it. And you certainly cannot expect anyone to give it to you. So believe in yourself, negotiate for yourself, and own your own success. Now, I think in the last few slides, we talked about being okay with not winning every battle, and that's fine, because it's not going to happen. We have to be okay with that, because it is a learning opportunity. But at the same time, I don't want you to lose the sight of the fact that your value does not decrease based on someone's inability to see your worth. Again, read this in the context of not just your professional life, but your personal life as well. This topic is the one that is not getting a lot of attention. And I have to say that I suck at it too. I haven't mastered the art of prioritizing myself. And I think men are probably a lot better at this than women are. And I think it's because we have this crazy idea of a superwoman that we need to achieve. Have a perfect career, have a perfect marriage, be a perfect mother, be a perfect wife, be whatever the case might be. And while it's great to, aspire to be something perfect, it is just not sustainable. And at some point, something's got to give. And most of the time, it's our own mental well-being. So be brave enough to prioritize yourself and really take it seriously. Like, if you have to, put it in your calendar and treat it with the same vigor and same importance that you would treat a meeting with your boss or a meeting with your team. Prioritizing yourself is not selfish, because what it does, it allows you to recharge and come back as a happier, more productive employee, leader, parent, spouse, whatever the case might be. And at the end of the day, you are your longest commitment. So please be brave enough to prioritize yourself. Again, I am work in progress. I haven't mastered the skill. So if anyone has tips on how to actually do it, I'm all ears. Now that we spent the last half an hour talking about all of this wisdom that I hope that resonates with you, I want to leave you with a challenge. And that challenge is to really think about, what is your big, hairy, audacious goal? Something that's extravagant, crazy, not, trying to fit into a bikini before summer. That's not it. What's the ultimate goal that you want to achieve? And then write it down. Write it down and reverse engineer all the steps that you need to take to actually achieve that goal, because that's your plan. And that plan needs to have specific action items that you can hold yourself accountable in order to get to the final destination. Once you have it on a piece of paper, put it up somewhere where you will see it every single day. And because, as you know the saying, what gets measured gets done. So if you're able to see it every day, you can kind of check mark where you are and what's the progress that you're making. And what I would love the most is that each and every one of you reach out to me sometime from today and tell me that you finally got your BHAG, you achieved it. Now, I do want to take this time to thank my network and all of my mentors, both male and female, that have helped me on my way and that continue helping me. And that's why it gives me great pleasure to do the same for others as well. I want to really thank all the allies, because I don't think you guys understand how important your role is, how important it is to have someone on the inside speak for those who have forgotten that they have a voice. And I know that most of the allies were inspired by the daughters that they're raising. So thank you for doing that as well. Thank you for raising the next generation of female leaders. And for everyone on here, please remember, you're always one decision away from a totally different life. So make it a bold, brave, and a brilliant one. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Sanja. So many good tips and nuggets in there. We appreciate you so much. I definitely feel like I have a lot of questions, but want to open this up to the rest of the group. We have a lot of people on the call. Does anyone have any questions for Sanja or feedback or things that they would like to share?
Hey, Sonia, my name's Kristen. I appreciate you spending time with us today. That was really amazing. One thing that you said that resonated with me a lot was you can't control your surroundings or what happens to you, but you can control how you react to it. So I guess my question for you would be, has there been a situation in your life, or where was your shift in making that realization and then putting it into reality? Because that's definitely something I work on every day as well, and I think resonates really well to our industry as a whole.
Kristen, I'm so glad you asked this question, because I'll tell you, I clearly remember when the shift happened for me. And again, this is going to be a shout out to my girl Oprah, because it was something that she said that got me to have that switch happen. And this was probably, I'm going to age myself, but I think it was probably 15 years ago, if not more. And she went on and she talked about The Secret. I don't know, you seem like you probably were too young to remember that, but please do yourself a favor. Go on Netflix and find it, The Secret. Watch it. Now, don't judge the graphics, because yes, it is 15 years old. So, you know, look past that, but listen to the message and listen to what is being said. And I think for me, that was my turning point, and one of the main reasons why I just love Oprah. So, so maybe once you watch it, hit me back. I want to know what you thought of it. I would really interested to find out.
Awesome, I will. Thank you.
Thanks, Kristen. Sanja, I want to jump in with a question. You talked about, thanking your allies at the end of the presentation. Can you give some examples of maybe how some of your male leaders or mentors had showed up as an ally throughout your career?
Absolutely. So one of my first mentor was actually a man. He was the head of legal department in the organization that I worked at. And he, mind you, I was in my early 20s. So, I still needed to figure out a lot of stuff. And for me at the time, my biggest concern was that stuff was not happening as fast as I wanted it to. Stuff around me, stuff around, what I'm doing and, the deliverables that I'm trying to achieve. Like, people are not on the same wavelength and the speed that I wanted to get things done. So he sat me down and he had a conversation with me about, and the first thing he said is, what's the rush? You're 20, whatever I was at the time, early 20s. What's the rush? You have your whole life ahead of you. Why don't you focus on building your relationships now and learn from those around you? And at that moment, I think right now I appreciate it a lot more than I did back then, because to me at that time was like, okay, he's brushing me off. He's not really giving me tangible things that I can do to improve things. But he was actually doing me a favor by telling me, stop talking and start listening, because there's a lot more that you can learn if you just keep quiet and let everyone around tell you what it is that's on their mind. So that was just one example. And what I've seen since then is a lot more of the allies stepping up and putting those who, again, forgot that they have a voice, putting them on a platform to say, hey, publicly asking, what do you think? You've been awfully quiet. What do you think? What do you think about this idea? What is it that what are your thoughts on the next steps? Asking those questions in a group setting where a lot of women just simply wouldn't feel comfortable to do it. Maybe because they're shy to do it, or maybe because, all the men in the room are just talking too much and you can't get a word in. Whatever the case might be, just opening up that door and pushing that leader forward is what's needed. And also, when you're looking to fill in the roles in your own team, one of the easiest things to do is look at the way the job descriptions are written. A lot of the times they do have a lot of masculine wording in there, and it's nothing that anyone's doing on purpose. I just think it's the way that things have been done, and no one has really looked into it. But when you do think about the way it is worded, and all of the qualifications that are required, the data shows that women will only apply to the jobs if they meet at least 95% of the criteria. Men, on the other hand, they'll go through the job qualifications, and if they meet 50%, they're like, yeah, I'm good. I can apply for this. So there's a big difference between the two. So maybe looking the way that you actually write your job postings, that will entice both sexes to look at it and equally apply for it. So it's just, there's so many things, and the D&I became such a hot topic, especially in the recent years, I'm going to say, that it's great because it's gaining traction. It's making people talk about it, where before it wasn't really a topic. It was a bit of a lip service. People talked about it, but really did nothing about it. Where I think now more and more organizations are proactively looking to see how they can diversify the workforce, because women do present 50% of the population. So not allowing to be part of 50% of your workforce really deprives the organization of the diversity of thought, if anything else. So I hope that I said a lot of things, probably a lot more than what you actually were asking, but I hope that was insightful. And I don't know if did I answer it? I hope I did. I did. Okay, George is saying yes. Okay, good.
Yeah, really good examples and some actionable things that we could look into. Kelsey Cheney had a follow-up question around, thinking about the job descriptions. When you're thinking about words and content going on job descriptions, are there any words that would be attractive to both males and females?
Yeah, start by avoiding using he or she. That's the first step, because I think a lot of the jobs, like even if you just do a simple search on LinkedIn as an example of all of the jobs, you will notice that a lot of them just assume that it's applicable to males, because it will say this role will report to blah blah blah. He will be responsible for blah 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 blah. Like, as simple as that. Removing those is probably the first step. But more so than the pronouns, it's the actual qualifications, the way that you write it. Do not make it so restrictive, because I think a lot of the times when I know I'm guilty of it too, when I'm trying to fill the roles in my own team, I'm looking for a unicorn. The fact is you're not going to get one, because what you want that is so specific, chances are you will get someone that meets 80-70% of that, and you'll be completely fine with that, because there's always that expectations that you will train somebody in the new role. But if you're fine with 70%, does it really make a difference if there is a 50% instead of 70? Because you're still going to spend time training. So you should be hiring for attitude, hiring for character, because the skill can be learned. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, I love that. What else? Who has some questions?
I think there was some questions at the from the registration.
Yep, I could definitely jump to one of those. So one that came in, so do you think there is a glass ceiling in corporate America?
Yes, absolutely. There is a glass ceiling. And I think that there is a glass ceiling, and I do see a lot more female leaders smashing it and breaking through. But unfortunately, I do see a lot of them smashing it, breaking it through, and then building a concrete floor. And that's not something that, that's got to stop, right? And what I mean by bringing the concrete floor is because you have this feeling, oh my God, I worked so hard to get to where I am. And now I just want to make sure that here I am and no one can replace me. And it's such a stupid way of thinking, because really, it's doing yourself a disservice, but also you're not lifting up others to follow in your footsteps. So to answer your question, yeah, I do believe there is a glass ceiling. Yes, I am happy to see it being broken every single day. And what I would like to see even more of is that once it's broken, there is no concrete floor that's being built underneath.
Awesome. And just a follow-up question to that, can you give us an example of maybe an action you took in your career where you broke that ceiling, or a situation that would relate to that?
I think if you just look at the timeline of my career, it is first of all, I have to say the beginning of it wasn't really planned. The stuff kind of just evolved. It just happened. And I know it's weird to talk about it, but the role that I'm in right now, 25 years ago, I didn't even know that this job existed. So it's not like that I planned for it. It was just an evolution of the things that were happening around me and the interests and the different paths that I took in my career that got me to where I am. So every step of it was breaking it a little bit more to get to that next step where I want to be. And I really, I know that there are some people that I used to work with that are on this call here, and they can probably attest to it. But every time I would move, I would proactively look to see who else I can pull with me, because I know by doing that, that person will do the same thing to somebody else, and we'll have this chain reaction of female leaders that will just climb to the top, follow one another to get to where they want to be. Now, I keep saying female leaders because, you know, you don't have to have a title to be a leader, but you also do, not everyone wants it as well. So I think we need to be very clear that if it is something that you want, you aspire to be, then yes, let's pull you forward. But we also need to be comfortable that not everyone wants to be that. Some people are fine being in that comfort zone that we talked about. And, you know, I don't want anyone holding that against them either. But yeah, that's kind of my story. Nothing was really planned. It just kind of evolved and it happened because of the result of different circumstances that I found myself in over the last 20 plus years. I can't even believe when I'm saying it, 20 years, right? It just seems like it was yesterday. But yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks for adding more content around that. Another question that came in. So when you're thinking about diversity, equity, inclusion, and you know, being in different organizations, you've probably seen it work where it's an emphasis on leadership, really driving that cultural change and transformation, and then employees driving that. So the question is, how can that be, which way is more important and more effective to an organization to drive that change, and what's leadership's role in that?
Every big change has to start from the top. Otherwise, it's not going anywhere. Otherwise, it's the lip service, right? So driving it from the top down is the sure most effective way to make an impact. Now, if you remember, in one of my slides, I said, what gets measured gets done. And I truly believe that being measured on your diversity, and I think for most of the organizations that are publicly traded, it's kind of a given. It's part of the ESG component that you have to measure on anyways, right? So maybe just elevating that a little bit more and driving it from the top down is how you make it happen. But again, going back to what I said, if it gets measured, it gets done. So having it in people's personal objectives, where their bonuses are tied to the fact that they need to have X amount of diversity, female, male, like just diversity in general. Like you don't, it's part of human nature to hire people just like us, right? And if you constantly keep doing that, you will end up with a whole bunch of Sanjas in Sanja's team, right? Whole bunch of Melissas in Melissa's team. You just need to step out of the comfort zone and look for people that complement you, not people that are just like you. And again, it's human nature. It's a habit. It's no one is doing it on purpose. You just kind of unintentionally get to that point. So by having in your personal objectives where your bonus is tied to it, you are almost forcing everyone to think outside of the box when they're looking to build their team, when they're looking to promote within their team, when they're looking to do anything. Now, I do want to make it clear that I absolutely believe that the best person for the job needs to get hired, regardless of their appearances and their sex. But if it comes down between two people and they have exactly the same qualifications, and one is diverse, one is not, I think that we owe it to ourselves to give a chance to the one that was traditionally underrepresented. So while it's great to have the grassroots movement, and that, you know, we do see it in a lot of organizations, there's different employee resource groups that are designed around the fact to increase diversity, and that's great. And it's great for employee engagement, but to actually make a cultural shift, that shift needs to be driven from the top down.
Awesome, thank you. There was a question from Larry in the chat, and definitely feel free to unmute yourself if I'm not framing this question up right, but it was, sorry I missed it. It's back to the job postings talking about secondary education for roles and having that listed on job descriptions. Larry mentioned I'm personally privileged to having attended post-secondary, but not everyone has that opportunity to due to cost or time. Do you have any thoughts or comments on that?
Education is great, but it's not the guarantee that you will succeed. It really isn't. It's a foundation. It's a foundational knowledge that is good to have because it does exactly that. It provides you with foundational knowledge that you can build on. But if you think just by having this crazy degree in whatever that's going to make you successful, unfortunately, it's not. It's not going to. So, is there a difference between those? Like, because I've seen people in my life that are super successful, super smart, and they don't have a formal education. And I've also seen the ones with formal education that really are not doing much with their life because I think they're used to being a lifelong student. So that's kind of where they're stuck at. So I think the question is, sorry, I'm just trying to read the question.
I'll rephrase the question.
Sure.
I guess the question is, I guess on job descriptions, you often see, please have a, required bachelor's degree in X, Y, Z or whatever. I'm hoping that down the road, we kind of try to see less of that in order to include more of the people that haven't had the opportunity to attend post-secondary education, because I think a lot of things you can learn, but it's great to have that foundation. But that's all I'm trying to say, is that if we can try to get to a point where not like every business analyst or whatever needs to have those degrees to come into the workforce, I think we'd be better off.
I agree with you, Larry. And I think what you're probably seeing is, if you pay attention, a lot of the new roles that are actually coming out are so new, and they are driven by the technology that really, even if you wanted to have someone with a formal education in that specific thing, universities and colleges are not up to speed. There's no such curriculum to teach you about, all of these things that are happening right now, right? Like, even when you think about it today, all of the kids that are in university right now studying whatever that is technology based, their knowledge will be obsolete by the time they graduate, because technology's life cycle is 12 to 18 months. So I agree with you that it's probably not, it's not be all and all that you need to include in all of your job posting, but it's also very much specific to the role that you're going after as well. And giving an opportunity to those that might have not had a chance to get formal education. And I think it's a great way to do it by phrasing your job posting that same way, especially if you're willing to put in the time and actually train the new hires into whatever you're doing. And I go back to what I said. Hire for the character, because the skill can be taught. Where really the character, it is what it is. You're either gonna fit in or you're not in the cultural fit.
Awesome. Thanks for bringing that up, Larry. Any other questions out there for Sanja, as we have about 5 more minutes with her today?
I was just going to say that so many great takeaways today, so thank you. But something that specifically stood out to me, my first week here, I don't know if Kim's on today, but first week here, a colleague had wrote on a little piece of paper the quote, "The only person you should try to be better than is the person you were yesterday." And that was on my computer for, I guess, six years pre-COVID, and then we moved, and that was just a friendly reminder to put it back on my computer, because especially in, not speaking for all, but day to day, it's such a good reminder, because it's nonstop, right? So thank you for that.
Oh, absolutely. 100%. Put it back. Remind yourself, right? That is the only competition. And you know what? I think it's not only should that be your only competition, but it just makes it that much easier, right? Like, you're competing against yourself and you have full control over yourself, as opposed to trying to compete with this fictional thing that you're envisioning that someone else has that you might not have, where you really don't have a context as to how they got to that point, right? So thank you for that. I'm glad that it was a great reminder. Put it back, because I'll tell you, I have it too. Just in case you forget about it.
I have a question as well. You mentioned that, how you can't really demand your worth if you don't understand your own worth yourself. And I think that women sometimes, we have like a restricted way of thinking based off of what we've been told about ourselves and our capabilities from society. So do you have any suggestions or just, small action steps that, we can take to continue taking up space and, demonstrating our worth to ourselves and others?
Megan, you're 100% correct. And I think a lot of restrictions is because they were imposed on us. It's not a self-belief. You were just kind of brought up that way. I think the first step to deal with that is to remember when I talked about gratitude, go through the list of stuff that you're grateful that you have achieved and accomplished, and all of this stuff, all the hurdles that you overcame to get to that point. And once you put it on paper, and I'm saying write it down, like I know it's so old fashioned, but I write everything down because there's a connection between a pen and my brain that just works. But once you see it in writing, you kind of step back and you say, holy cow, like I'm good. I kick butt. And, I don't need anyone to tell me that because I can see it for myself. Because if you were to look at all of those accomplishments that you put down for yourself, if you were to look at not knowing that it's about you, it's about somebody else, you would have the same reaction. You would say, oh, wow, this person is amazing. So I think that's the first step. You got to break that belief down. So I'll tell you, I'm lucky enough that I grew up, again, I have two sisters, there's three of us, and our poor dad, he was surrounded by women for, all of our lives. And I think we were lucky enough that we had him the way he was, because he always instilled in us that we can do whatever we want. He never differentiated between, girls do this versus boys do that. And I think that's just, I think we're pretty lucky that we had that. For those, but not everyone does, and I recognize that. And now when you're not under that, you kind of need to shed those shackles off by going through the list and look at what is it that you accomplished and what more can you do to accomplish to realize your self-worth. Now, I don't know if your question is specific to personal life or professional life, but it doesn't really matter because it's applicable to both, right? You need to, in your personal life, you need to have a co-pilot, your partner that will be there to support you, not to drag you down. And that's why I call it co-pilots, because you're driving a plane and you need someone that will be equally there to lift their weight and help you land that plane safely. If it is a work-related thing, grind versus grit. If you are in the grind mode, you know what to get. You know what to do to get yourself out of there and elevate your profile and go somewhere else where you will be appreciated. But it really only starts with you, Megan. So we can take it offline. More than happy to talk about it. But as I said before, that my turning point was that Oprah episode 15 years ago when she talked about The Secret. And I urge, if you haven't seen it, just watch it and let me know what you think about it. Because I guarantee you, and I tell this to everybody, I guarantee you it will change your outlook on life.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome. Sorry, Missy. I don't know if I see 1 minute left. I don't know if we're going to get cut off or we're going to close it.
No, it's not end the presentation. So we definitely want to make sure we create space for anyone else that had questions, and also be respectful of your time too, Sanja. So I think that was a really great way to close on, though. I loved Megan's question and the advice that you gave to her, and a good call to action to check out The Secret for that recommendation.
Not just that. Write down your BHAG, your big, hairy, audacious goal, reverse engineer the steps to get there, put it up on the wall, and hold yourself accountable to it. And I want to know if you are. It's going to take some time, depending on what it is. It's going to take some time, but I do want to hear about it. So if you found anything that I said here inspiring and it helps you move to the next level where you want to be, please do let me know. My heart would be full knowing that I was able to make a difference in someone else's life and career.
Love that. Well, we'll send out Sanja's LinkedIn URL so you can message her when you write out your goals and watch The Secret or read the book. So thank you so much for your time, Sanja. We appreciate it. Thanks for everyone joining. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sanja.
Thank you, guys. Thanks, everyone.